everybody. We are live. Welcome to the Communication 24/7 podcast, where we communicate about how we communicate. I'm your host, Jennifer Furlong. Today, we are recording another edition of Unscripted, where I bring in a special guest to talk about the world of communication and what are some of the things that they do within that world of communication. And today, my guest is Erin Whalen, who is a professional actor and she is a compassionate coach. So we're going to talk about that label here in just a minute. But Erin, thank you so much for joining us, being on the show. I'm so happy that you are here.
Jennifer, I feel the same. I am so happy to be here, and I think the work you're doing is awesome, and I'm so glad to be here and to share this time with you.
Thank you so much. I feel the same. And we've already had, one conversation previously, and then right before the show started, we were talking about there's definitely a lot of room and need for collaboration. So this definitely will not be the last conversation that we have. So anyone who is tuning in or will be tuning in, we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. So we would love for you to be a part of the show. So if you can just give a shout out, in the comments, where are you listening from? Ask any questions that you would like to have answered. We'll do our best to answer that question. And just, be a part of the show. It makes it fun for everybody, to be able to have that type of a conversation. So please don't be shy and participate. So it is 11:02 a.m. In Savannah. So, Communication 24/7. I'm located in a small town called Richmond Hill, right outside of Savannah, Georgia. So Erin, why don't you introduce yourself? Let us know, where are you calling in from? What is your background? And then we'll just kind of jumpstart the conversation from there.
Awesome. So I am dialing in from Arlington, Virginia, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. I have a Savannah connection. I've never been there, but my husband went to college down there at Savannah College of Art and Design. So I've heard about Savannah for a million years because we've been together for a million years. But I'm dialing in from Arlington, but I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska. So I'm a Midwesterner at heart now, thrust into what feels like a big city, but I've got roots here. So I'm happy to be out on the East Coast, be an East Coaster?
Yeah, East Coaster? I don't know. That's a good question. East Coaster? East Coaster?
I'm on the East Coast.
Right.
That's where I am. I don't know how to describe that other than I'm on the East Coast. So my background is varied. Like I started right after college as an elementary school teacher, which was not my purpose in life. I only lasted 2 years. And then I realized
found out real quick that wasn't for you.
not the right fit, not the right fit at all. So, and then I just kind of bounced around and did a whole bunch of different work, a lot of experience in acting, which has taken all sorts of forms. And that work, I feel like, laid the foundation for the work that I do now as a communication coach, because a lot of the work I do in acting is I kind of let go of a lot of the, be an extra in a movie or, be in a play, audition for this small, this short film that's coming to DC. I'm not doing that kind of acting anymore. The acting I still do really has a purpose, and not to say that the other acting doesn't, but this feels more in line with what I want to do. So the acting I do now, two types of acting. One is professional role playing. So I do work with, for instance, one of the contracts that I do, not through my company, but just as an individual actor, I work with doctors and I play patients to help them work on their communication skills so that I'm able to fully embody that patient that either they have a hard time communicating with, or the patient that triggers them because they have this background or this affect or this whatever. So I'm able to portray that for the doctors. And then do that experience, have that experience, and then give them feedback. So that's kind of one of the ways that I'm using acting right now. And the other way is I'm a playback theater practitioner. So I do playback theater, which is an improvisational theater form. And we hear people's stories and then we play them back. So we go into communities and do this, companies, or we just have shows for the public. Whoever wants to come can just come and share their story, usually related to some kind of theme. And we hear their stories. We listen intently. We try and capture what the essence of that story is. We play it back for our audience members.
That's amazing. I think what you are doing is so needed, and there's a couple of things that I want to be able to unpack,
Yeah.
during this interview. First, the idea of the things that you learn, the concepts that you learn as an actor, and how you are able to connect those concepts to being a more effective communicator. So that's one thing that I want to spend some time unpacking. And then some other things, you had mentioned improv. I know personally that there are, some elements to even improvisation that could help, individuals become better at communicating. And then another thing I wanted to unpack, so we're going to have a lot to talk about, would be the, even just the title of your company, compassionate coaching. So I want to talk a little bit about that, where that came from, and, how that stems from your values, as a person, and what it is that you're hoping to achieve with that. So let's start with, some of those concepts that you've learned as an actor, and highlight maybe, 2 or 3 items that you have noticed throughout your experience, as a professional actor, that you've been able to bring into this world of communication consulting and communication coaching. What are some of the things that you help individuals learn to do in order to become a more effective communicator?
That is a wonderful question. And I would have to say, one of the things you have to do as an actor is you have to get into another person's perspective, get into their skin, get into their thoughts, their feelings, their reactions. And so that has helped me develop the skill of being able to see other people's perspectives more clearly and empathize with them. And so I have a broad idea of all of the things that someone could think about a topic, or about a person, or about a situation, because I've put on different roles throughout the years, right? I've been able to step into what would it be like to look at this from the perspective of an elderly African-American man? What would it look like if I consider the situation from a 12-year-old girl who has a single parent? Or to be able to step into those different roles, I think has given me the ability to quickly be able to see things from different perspectives. And I think that that's something that everyone can and should be able to do, right? Because we're the stars of our own world, right? We're
Yes.
very
we are the main attraction.
We're the main attraction, right? And it's easy to think that everyone thinks like us, or everyone views a situation the same way, or everyone hears something the same way. But that's not true. It's not true. It's good to step outside of yourself and consider the possibilities of how someone else might be interpreting a statement, a situation.
Yeah, that's such a valuable tool to be able to use. And that's actually one of the things, even in a communication classroom, let's say if, in an interpersonal communication class, sometimes we'll talk about a theory called standpoint theory, and I'm sure that you've probably heard of that, and that you're literally doing what you just described. You kind of put yourself into someone else's shoes, and you think about, what would this story look like from that person's point of view, and some of the fun things that we would do in class, let's say, for example, the Three Little Pigs, or, Little Red Riding Hood, some well-known story, and it's always told from the main character's perspective. But what if you were to put a twist on that? Now, how would that story go from the point of view of, the oldest brother pig, from the Three Little Pigs, what would that perspective be like? And then the
Right.
second, little pig, how would that story play out from the second little pig's, point of view?
Yeah.
So, and in communication, I always like to remind anyone I'm working with is that the message you send may not necessarily be the message that's received.
Yep.
Because just like you said, we all have different frames of reference,
Mhm.
and those different frames of references are created by the experiences that we've had, and all of us have
Yeah.
very different experiences. So being mindful of that other person's perspective as best as you can, because it's impossible to completely know,
Right.
where they're truly coming from and truly what their experiences have been. But to just be mindful of that,
Mm.
is such an important tool. So how do some of the things that you do is role playing, right? To
Mhm.
help
Mhm.
others become better at this concept of, thinking about this from another person's perspective.
Yeah.
Are there things that you do to prepare for that? Because sometimes, like you had just mentioned a second ago, how would this look like to me from, from an African American male's perspective, or from a, 10-year-old little girl's perspective, or,
Mhm.
how do you prepare for something like that if that's truly like you're so far removed from that perspective? It's really difficult to try
It
to
is.
assume.
Yes. It is, it is, and I think the preparation might sound counterintuitive,
Mhm.
but the preparation is actually to just be as present as possible, right?
Mm,
So
mhm,
if I prepare well, I might be doing some meditation prior. I
mhm,
might be doing some some reflection, or just some time to just let go, because the other thing is, when the role playing does happen, you don't have any time to prepare, right?
right.
You may only have just the minute or two it takes to set up what it's going to look like, and
Mhm.
who that person wants to practice
Yeah.
conversing with. Um, so to really empty myself is the best preparation, because if we're present, and if I'm letting go of all of the preconceived notions I have, and if I'm letting go and I just listen intently to the type of person that they're describing, then I'm more able to fully embody that person, because I'm letting go of all of the stuff and all of the inner critic that might be happening in my own mind,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
You can't do that. You don't know anything about that perspective. You don't know anything about being that person. But we do, right?
Mhm.
Now, don't get me wrong. I will never, for instance, be able to understand what it's like to be Black in America. I
Right.
can't know that. And I'm
Yeah.
very clear that that is a different experience than my own experience
Mhm,
as a white
mhm.
woman, right?
Right.
However, I can tap into emotions that I can imagine they might be
Yeah.
experiencing, right?
Mhm,
So I can tap into what it feels like to be overlooked, to
mhm,
be misunderstood, to be grieving. I can tap
mhm.
into those human experiences to try and step into the shoes of someone whose experience is very different from my own.
Right, right. That is an excellent point to make. We're not trying to assume that we know everything
Right.
from another person's point of view. However, just on a human level, right? Just when we look at what it is to be a human being,
Mm-hmm.
and to go through this thing we called life, which is hard, by the way,
It
right?
is. Yeah.
So who has not experienced, that feeling of disappointment, or that feeling of being judged, or that
Mm-hmm.
feeling of, being hurt,
Mm-hmm.
being scared in some way, being concerned about something, being misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
So I that is such a critical piece to being an effective communicator, is being able to tap into that and to understand that my truth is not synonymous with the truth, right? So we all have these different experiences, but to be able to understand that there are some basic things that we all do have in common, and those
Mm-hmm.
emotions and feelings, the way it feels, we definitely can tap into that.
Absolutely.
So earlier you had mentioned improv,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something I have not I have not gotten the what do I want to say? I have not become brave enough to sign up for an improv class. Although, like in the classroom, we would do kind of sort of like some improvisation, especially in public speaking.
Yeah.
I would easily throw out a topic and then we would just kind of on the spot create many speeches on that topic.
That's
So I
amazing.
guess it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
But what are some things that, if someone wanted to take an improv class, what are some of those things that they do in that class? Because I know there are probably a lot of people like myself who have always been interested in it. And I think it would be fun, but just hesitant because you're just afraid of what's happening in there. So take us through that. What would an improv class look like? And what would we be able to take away from that as far as, helping improve our communication skills?
Well, and just to be clear, the type of improv I do is very different. So I'm not like, whose line is it anyway? Like, that is not the type of improv I
do. That's a fantastic show, by the way.
It's so good. It's so good. I don't even know. Is it still on? Are they still like?
I don't know. I know they do reruns at least.
Okay. It's an excellent show
somewhere out there. Yeah.
It's so fun to watch. So I don't have that type of experience in improv. However, some of the concepts are the same. So let me talk a little bit again about playback to give you a frame of reference, and then I'll talk through probably the most popular or well-known concept of improv that is very helpful when you think about communication skills.
Okay.
So playback, we hear people's stories and then we play them back. So we hear a story and there's usually a theme. So say the theme is I'm going to be involved in a show in May on the mothers in our lives, right? In conjunction with Mother's Day. However, it doesn't have to be in terms of a biological mother, right? It could be a mother figure, grandmother figure. Right. So people are coming to the show already thinking in terms of the mothers in their lives, right? And maybe some stories. So we elicit stories from them about their mothers or the mothers in their lives. And the stories that we hear, we just have to listen as the actors. We have to listen very carefully, not just to the story, but any sort of emotions that person is expressing, because that is the deeper level, right? We've got the facts, and then we've got this connection to our heart with these stories. So then when we play back that story, we're not just playing back a chronological or a, once upon a time, and then the facts of the story. We're playing back the essence of that person's story. So when we do playback, we're really listening intently, which is a huge component of communication skills, as you know, right? You're listening with intent to hear and understand that person and what they're really trying to say. We're letting go, like we talked earlier, about how we might, personally perceive that, but really try and get into their shoes, try and see it from their perspective. What are they trying to communicate with us? So I think this concept is probably the most well-known improv concept, and it is, taught, if you will, in traditional improv classes, and it's also something that we do in playback. It's yes and. Okay. And so what that means is if you're improvising and you have people that you're improvising with, literally there's no plan. Like, you may have a plan in your head about what's going to happen, and they may have a plan in their head about what's going to happen, and it could be completely different. So you have to make it up together as you go along. And if someone offers you a gift, is what we call it, right? A gift of where to move the story or what character you should be, the response is yes. But it doesn't stop there. It's yes and. Right? So Jennifer, if you and I were like improvising something right now, and you were trying to clue me into the fact that I was going to be, Little Red Riding Hood, I would say, yes, and I love my red cloak. And you look so scary with those teeth, right? So I would be saying, yes, I'm Red Riding Hood, and you are the wolf, right? So it's right. It's not negating any offer, right? Yeah. And the connection, and I'm sure you're already like all the connections to communication skills, but the connection is, especially like say teams working together. If you're in a meeting and someone's always shooting down every possibility, you're not going to get anything done. And in fact, you're just going to hurt feelings and breed resentments. It's not going to be productive. So if people are able to listen and take that as a yes, and then add on to it, you're going to see so much more growth, creativity, so much more of a functional team, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's there's a concept I talk about a lot in workshops. It's called, communication climate. And I can see such a great connection between what you're talking about and the communication climate that we're setting up. So for example, we'll go with your example of you're having a team meeting and you can feel that negative heavy weight of a bad communication climate, just like with the weather, if
Right.
it's cloudy and it's raining and it's dark and, everybody's unhappy and everyone's stressed out. But I really like how, the yes and idea, because in order to um, confirm, right, what someone else is thinking, what someone else is saying, that doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that they're saying, but who doesn't want to feel acknowledged, right? Who doesn't want
Right.
to feel you can disagree with me, but at least try to understand where I'm coming from, right? So if you can, this is such a great, I think I'm going to use this the next
Great.
time listen to what the person is saying, especially, if you're engaged in conflict and we already established we have this negative communication climate going on.
Yeah.
Think about how quickly you could try to change that communication climate with words that affirm what the other person is saying, and then you can add on to that. So if
Yes.
they say something, yes, and keep building off of that. So what a wonderful tool, to be able to use, not only in the workplace during team meetings and try to help, make better connections and better manage that conflict, but, even of course in personal relationships, right?
Yes.
um,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So I really love that. What an amazing tool to use. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about what you do in terms of going into different organizations, and what are some of the things that you specifically focus on, in your coaching, in your consulting. So take me through, what is the typical organization like for you? What is it that you're trying to help them, achieve when you go into an organization?
So my goal is to help people communicate, especially people in the helping profession, helping them communicate more effectively and compassionately.
Hmm.
So the benefits to that are just innumerable, right?
Yeah.
If people are going to communicate among themselves as a team, communicate more effectively and compassionately, they're going to be a much stronger team. They're going to care about each other, right? And the
Hmm.
data shows that when we actually care about the people that we work with, it's going
Hmm.
to be more productive. There's going to be less burnout, less turmoil. And
Hmm.
then the people that they serve, right? If they're able to communicate with them effectively and compassionately, just think of how much we could benefit as a
Right.
society
Yeah.
if we all work on communicating better, right? More
Mhm.
effectively and more compassionately. Our world is really lacking in that area, unfortunately.
Yeah, we are very much divided in this
Yes.
day and age, and that's something that I think you and I both agree. One of the
Mhm.
things that I also want to do, through the programs that I run, is to just help people make that connection.
Mhm.
And again, we're not always going to agree on everything, and that's okay. We're
Right.
human, right?
Right. Right.
Any relationship that you are in, whether it's a professional relationship or, a romantic relationship, if it's a friendship, if you're going to be in that relationship for any length of time,
Mhm.
at some point, if you're together long enough, you will find a way to disappoint the other person and vice
Right.
versa. The
Right.
other person will find a way to disappoint you, and the workplace
Mhm.
is no different.
Mhm.
So and sometimes, in the workplace, we're forced to work with others that
Mhm.
you know what? Let's be honest. At the end of the day, it's like you are not someone that I would choose to hang around, right?
Right,
You're
right,
not someone I would choose to hang around with.
right.
And but you said something about, with compassion and communicating with compassion and listening with compassion. And so
Mhm.
let's say I'm trying so hard, to try to make a connection and trying to have some compassion for the other person. I would recommend, even if you can't get to that point, because I know so many people who work in different organizations and it ain't happening, right?
Right, right,
Like
right, right.
just don't like them.
Yeah.
That's fine. But at least think about the goals that you've set together, as a
Mhm.
department or,
Mhm.
as an organization, think about the values that you might share in order to achieve that goal. So,
Mhm.
there is a way to work in a bit of compassion into that communication.
Yeah.
If you can think in terms of, all right, I'm not going to think about that person as an individual and their life choices and all of those things that
Right,
they post on Facebook, and all of
right.
that stuff. But we're here for a purpose. We're here for a
Mhm.
reason. We
Mhm.
both agree on the goal. We agree that the values that the organization has set, we
Mhm.
agree with those values. And
Yep.
so maybe that's another workaround to be able to have, the compassion for that aspect of it. Focus on the goal that we can
Yeah.
achieve together.
And,
And that's really tough.
hearing you say it like that, it really brings to mind, how cool is that? That two people
Mhm.
can be so opposite and yet have the common ground of believing strongly in the company's or the nonprofit's
Yeah.
vision or their purpose. So how cool is that? That
Yeah.
we're gonna be different from each other. Like we are unrepeatable. Like we are
Yeah.
individuals. There's never gonna be another Jennifer Furlong just like
Right.
you, right? There's never gonna
Yeah.
be another. But that's a good thing, right?
Right.
But it,
Right.
it makes it challenging if those people are either polar opposites to us or for whatever reason they just bother us.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard.
It happens, right?
It
I mean, yeah,
happens. Of course
humans.
it happens. Of course it happens. And that's kind of what I do. That's not kind of, that is what I do, right? So if you're struggling with even a coworker, as I talked earlier about the role playing, like I or my other professional role players that I bring on to do teamwork with me can become that coworker who drives you crazy. And you
Right.
can practice having a conversation with that coworker in
Mhm.
this low stakes environment where you can
Yes.
try saying this or saying that, see how it lands, and you can try it in this low stakes way. It's a safe way. You're not going to risk embarrassment in front of your coworker or, wanting to strangle them, right?
Yes,
You can,
yes.
like you can practice it, right? And gain the skills of what works for me and what works for them when it comes to having a conversation. How do I keep my
Mhm.
boundaries while still communicating in a way that they hear me?
Right.
And that I'm heard too, right? Or that they hear me and I hear them, so that it's
Mhm.
both ways. And so you try that with the role player until you feel like, okay, I got this. I'm going to try this in real
Mhm.
life and see how it goes.
Yeah. So anybody who is, watching this and, in the future, or if you're watching the recording, remember communication is a skill, just
Yeah.
like any other skill. You have to work at it to get good at it. So what Erin is talking about is so incredibly important because, when we think about practicing, we usually think about public speaking, right?
Mm.
In terms of communication. I want to practice the speech that I've written out so that, I feel prepared. It sounds good. It's smooth. But you're right. For those really important conversations, you can apply those same concepts, and that's what you're talking about, the practice part of it.
Yeah.
And you're providing a safe environment
Mhm.
where you can try these concepts out, right? And you don't have to worry about okay, if they're going to take it a certain way, and it ends up escalating versus de-escalating what it is,
Mm-hmm.
the exact opposite happens than what you intended. So I really love that idea of you bringing in, the role playing and giving individuals the opportunity to practice,
Yeah.
some of the concepts that we talk about. It's so important. It's not just about public speaking and practicing for public speaking. you
Right.
know Everyday communication is so incredibly important, and what may work for one person may
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily work for another person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because we are so unique, and because
Hmm.
even though I can fit into boxes, right? Like I fit into the introvert box, I fit into the mom
Right.
box, right? I fit into all of these boxes, right? And yet, I'm still an unrepeatable human being who's going to
Hmm.
react differently. And so it is, I know people are probably like, well, great, I'll never get it right. But
Yeah.
it's an art. It's an
Yeah.
art to be able to figure out, how do I communicate effectively and compassionately with this person who fits
Hmm.
some of the boxes, but I'm still trying to figure out like exactly how to maneuver that conversation and how to communicate so that we understand each other.
Right.
It's an art. It's a skill and it's an art, and it
Yeah.
takes practice. And I think
Yes.
another beautiful thing is that when people try working with me and role players, then they get the feedback, right? And they
Right.
get
Yeah.
feedback about things that they may not even have thought about. And it's
Hmm.
not it's once again in that low stakes environment. So you're not getting feedback from your boss about your
Yeah. Yeah.
performance. You're getting feedback about that person that you have a hard time communicating with, whether it's a
Hmm.
client, a coworker, a customer, a superior, right?
Hmm.
Having that conversation and having that role player really embody that person, then they can give you feedback. Now, it might not be exactly how the person in real life would respond, but they can at least guess, give an
Yeah.
educated guess and say, okay, when you said this with this tone of voice, I actually felt
Hmm.
like you were being very condescending towards me. I
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
judged, right?
Yes.
So they can take these observable behaviors
Hmm.
and try and take on that persona of that person, and then say, okay, if I'm this person and and you are speaking to me in this way or using these words, etc., this is how I feel.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that really takes away that, I cringe whenever I hear anyone say, well, I'm going to say it the way I say it.
Oh,
And, you can either deal with it or not, like
oh,
that's your problem. And it's like,
oh,
that's
well,
not going to be the most effective way to handle,
nope.
especially if you're engaged in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
You really do have to be mindful of that what you say and how you say it, you know, you really can impact how the other person could potentially, react to that. Even
Yeah,
though we all know you can't control what anybody else says, you can't
right,
control what they do,
right.
you can't control anyone else's behavior. But when you practice communication long enough, you can begin to see how the different tools that you use can help shape, right,
Mm-hmm.
that communication situation. So there are
Mm-hmm.
ways to be affirmative,
Mm-hmm.
and and again, still disagree with someone, but
Right.
still be respectful, right, and
Yes.
and
Yes.
still keep that line of communication open.
Yes.
um and earlier we had mentioned, of course, a lot of us work in so many places where we're stuck with people that, we may not necessarily enjoy working with. We may not necessarily like, that person, that individual, their behavior, whatever it is that we
Yeah.
disagree with. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, whatever your organization is, it doesn't matter what the organization is, you need to have people around you who are going to disagree with you every now and again.
Mm-hmm.
We need others to keep us in check. If
Yes.
we're surrounding ourselves with people who agree with us all the time, then when are we ever going to know when it's time to maybe challenge the status quo, right?
Exactly.
When are we going to know that maybe this is not the best idea? Maybe this isn't, the right approach. Maybe we need to get some different perspectives, so that we can understand,
And
better.
hearing you say that, it makes me think of if that climate is turbulent and, toxic, people are not going to feel safe speaking up.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it comes back to the climate of the company, of the organization,
Yeah.
because if people aren't going to challenge the decision, or if they're just saying, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, the whole time, it's not necessarily because what you're doing is great. It might be because they're scared to disagree with
They're
you.
just afraid. Yeah. They're afraid to, because what's going to happen?
Right.
Right. What could potentially happen? So it's, organizations, those of you who are in charge, make sure that you're establishing that type of communication climate where employees, the workforce feel as if they are able to engage in these important type of conversations, and feel free to challenge. Now, I will say it's not enough to say, well, I don't like that because it feels wrong, or I don't like that because it feels bad. It's okay to have feelings, but we also need to be able to back that up, right? With some concrete, evidence or examples of, all right, so at the end of the day, why do you feel like this is wrong, or why do you feel this, or why do you feel this could be the wrong trajectory, that we're going down.
Exactly.
So you named your company Compassionate Coaching, right? Um, why did you choose that name? Out of and I know as a business owner, there's a lot of pressure, right? So what is the title of my company going to be? And how does it describe me and what I want to, so tell me a little bit about that. How did you decide on Compassionate Coaching, and how does that represent you as a person?
So I'll start with a story of when I was founding this company, which was late 2020. And I picked the name, and I didn't have a website yet, but I had like a landing page, right, where it's just like coming soon. And I picked the name Compassionate Coaching. And then my website is compassionatecoaching.org. And I sent it to a friend, and I said, what do you think? And she said, that's you. And I was like, okay, like this, I think I'm on to something here. And so I'm a certified life coach, but the coaching I do is communication coaching now. So it took me a while after founding my organization to really find my niche and what I'm doing. And it's that communication work, especially with the acting experience that I have with the role playing, with the playback theater. So even back then, before I had the idea of communication being my focus, compassionate coaching felt right. It was, 2020, it was in the middle of the pandemic, before the vaccines were available. Everything felt scary, unknown, frustrating, just a lot of fear, right? And compassion is one of the values that I ascribe to, that I try and live my life by. Through my coach certification process, you have to do a lot of work on yourself. And one of the things we did was values, like figure out your values. And it was in the top 3, it was compassion. And so I thought, this is it, this is the way I want to coach. So it's both who I am. I try to be a compassionate person, and how I coach, right? I try to coach with compassion. So some people are just really direct and will just say it like it is, and will, tell that doesn't work. And that's just not my style, right? I approach things with more empathy and with more trying to take on that person's perspective, and trying to reach them in a way that honors them and helps them to still feel heard and not feel crushed or judged. So that's the purpose of it, of the name, is that I wanted to describe, and it's helping to keep me accountable too. Because like, even as I say, oh, I'm a compassionate person, I'm like, yeah, but
it can be challenging at times. It really can, because I will tell you, I'm, with my communication style and my personality type, I'm one of those direct people, and sometimes, and others who have, taken any of my workshops, we talk about different communication styles and how you can adapt to those communication styles. And so with someone like myself, who is more direct, I don't like a lot of small talk, all
Yeah.
the little chit chat, before the meeting begins, or if the meeting has begun,
Yep.
all the little chit chat. So I have to really remind myself that the chit chat isn't necessarily wasted time, right? I mean, chit
Mm-hmm.
chat functions as a way to maintain relationships, in the
Mm-hmm.
organization. So if there's somebody like myself who has that more direct conversation style or more direct communication style, that's one of the things that we also talk about is just being mindful of
Yeah.
how to adapt, and that's really what you're talking about. If I were to guess, I think you would be more of a people-oriented communication style where you're very much focused on, okay, these decisions that are happening in the organization, but how is it going to impact the workforce?
Yes.
These decisions. So for someone like you, the water cooler talk, right? The chit chat, the getting to know everyone and understanding from their perspective, that's going to come naturally for you. Whereas someone who's more direct, or maybe someone who tends to be a little more strategic minded, someone who
Mm.
likes to analyze, and we have those
Mm-hmm.
people who like to overanalyze everything,
Yep.
that can be a bit of a challenge as well. So, what advice do you have for others like myself who are not naturally inclined to be, to go more to that compassionate side, because we do tend we're sometimes we are mischaracterized as like the bullies, right?
Oh.
Because it's like, we like short sentences and we're directly to the point, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, there's no question. Well, then let's go. Let's do it.
Right. Did you wait 7 seconds? Did you
Right.
wait?
Exactly. So yeah, what would be, like just a quick piece of advice that you would have? Let's say you go into an organization and, I think this happens a lot in the medical field as well, because, everything is happening so quickly.
Yep.
And I think we've had a conversation about this before when in our previous conversation with doctors or nurses or, medical students who are being trained to go into the
Mm-hmm.
medical field. What do you say to them? Because they're trained to just, we've got to diagnose and
Yep.
we've got to move on to the next patient.
Yep.
So how do you emphasize to them the importance of being able to take that moment, and how do you help them develop that part of their communication skills?
Mm. Mm. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is a quote. I can't remember who said it,
Mhm.
but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
I love it. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's true. And so I think, thank God for doctors. Thank God for the people who can go out there and learn. I think you like double your vocabulary when you're in med school, like who can just have the capacity for retaining and processing immense amount of information and
Yeah.
data so that they can diagnose and treat, right? Like that's their purpose. But we have to acknowledge that that's a human being sitting across the exam table, right? Sitting across
Mhm,
the room.
mhm.
That's a human being. And so I think two things are coming to mind. One is that, as you say, like, oh, I'm naturally a direct person. Now, clearly,
Mhm.
in our conversation, I can tell that you're able to figure out how to communicate compassionately, right? Like
Right,
you know how to do it. But for those people
mhm.
who are like, I just don't know, no one's asking you to change your natural way. One thing that
Yeah.
helps is, and it's not an opportunity to just like excuse yourself from the work, right? Because it does take
Mhm.
work to improve your communication skills. But in the meantime, one thing that you can say, but you have to actually honestly believe it.
Right, right.
Say you're a fast talker, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to be leading a meeting or starting a conversation with someone, maybe you're a direct report or something, you can start by saying, look, I know I talk fast, I've always talked fast, I want you to feel comfortable interrupting me or asking questions as I go through, so
Yeah.
that if you can just recognize that there's something about yourself that's not going to change overnight, you
Mhm,
can
mhm.
admit it up front at the meeting, at the conversation, etc., so that others have that moment to say, oh, okay, yeah, he is talking fast, but he knows it and he wants me to interrupt. Or, and he said he's going to give me, time at the end to ask all my questions, or whatever it is. But saying something up front is
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
As far as the, medical schools teaching future doctors, I mean, it's like ingrained in the courses that they do now. Like, they practice having these conversations with patients. They practice delivering bad news. They practice, it's actually part of their board certification now, is that they have standardized patients as part. So it's not just, sit down and take a test. It's no, you have to practice interviewing this patient, and communication skills is part of that. So it's slowly but surely becoming ingrained in that work, so that it's so important to remember it's another person sitting there with you. You have to remember that.
Yeah. And I think regardless of whatever career path that you're in, whether you're in the medical field, whether you're in business, whatever your field is, it's really important to remember that whoever's sitting across that table from you, whether it's a conference table or, it's a desk, someone sitting, on the bed, in the hospital, like you said, it's a human being, and it's really easy to forget that aspect of it. Speaking of medical stuff, one of the things that I always like to ask my guests is to talk really quickly about maybe a book or something that they've enjoyed reading, that they would recommend, to any listeners to read. And you came up with a great idea. You were like, I don't really have a book, but I have a video. May I, have a video to share? I'm like, absolutely. What a great idea. Why didn't I think of that, beforehand? So, I do have the video queued up. It's a little over 4 minutes long. So what I want to do is I want to play this video now. And then afterwards, I want you to just say a little bit about the video and why you recommended this for anyone to watch and what it is that you want us to get out of the video.
Okay.
So let me cue this up. I am going to share video. You can tell that there we go. Look at that.
Good job.
Yay, Yay for technology. All right. That's right. That's right. So let's hope this works. Okay.
Okay.
Wow, what a powerful, powerful video. Um, yeah, yeah. So I can see why you would want to choose that video to share with the audience. So tell me a little bit about that. What are some of the things that speak to you in that video? As a communication coach, and what are some of the things that stand out to you? What are some lessons learned?
I think the whole point of that video is to show us that everyone has a story, right? Everyone
Mm.
has a story. Everyone has either an immediate thing that's happening to them, like, I'm coming to this appointment. I think I waited too long. I'm worried it's cancer. I'm worried this. I'm worried that. Or it's this like part of our story that is it just envelops everything that we do. For instance, the woman who, put the sticker on the little girl and it said, always wanted children of her own, right? Like that's not
Mm,
just something
mm,
she's going through today.
yeah,
That's the lens through which she sees her work and her
right.
life, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not just the, you have this thing today. It's that, no, what is that lens? What is that way that you're viewing the world that is
Mhm.
um, part of your story that is always present for you?
Yeah.
So it just shows the importance of, we have to hear each other. We have to see each other from what is most important to us or what we're experiencing. And I love the prompts, right? Like, would you treat them differently? Like, if you knew
Yeah.
these things about these people, would you treat them differently? And it's in the medical setting, but of course it's applicable to everything.
Mhm.
And you can even see the intricacies of, you had doctors who had things going on, you had patients who had things going on, you had custodial staff who had things going on, you had just everyone has something going on, right? We all have that heavy burden that we're carrying. And
Yes.
we've
Mhm.
just got to recognize that. And we want to be seen too. Like, let's not forget that yes, we want to have compassion on others and we want to be cared for too, right?
Mhm.
We want to have that self-compassion for ourselves.
Yeah. Um, what a wonderful way to, we're coming up toward the end of our hour together, and just watching that video, it is such a great reminder. When we think about we work in these large organizations, well, really no matter what size organization, it could be a small business, medium sized business, large business, it really doesn't matter, because the workforce, the people who are showing up and doing what they need to do, um, under the same umbrella, whatever organization they're working for. Yeah, everyone has something
Mm-hmm.
going on. And, at the very beginning, I think this is a great way to kind of wrap it up, because at one point you had mentioned, just you had, in your training, as a communication coach, you had to kind of stop and really think about your values and your experiences and the lens through which you see the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think this is a great invitation for anyone, who's going to watch this later or listen to this later, to kind of stop and take stock of what are your values, and what are your experiences. Like for me, watching that video, I was thinking about, on May 10th, it will be my cancerversary, right? What we call it, where I will be 4 years cancer free.
Wow.
And so absolutely, that journey in itself had a huge impact, right,
Mm-hmm.
on how I view the world, and the lens through which I see things. So, and as a mom,
Mm-hmm.
as a wife, as a
Mm-hmm.
cancer survivor, as a veteran, there are all of these experiences that, you know being mindful of how those experiences influence the lens through which I see the world is a very
Mm-hmm.
powerful thing to be able to do. So I invite everyone to do that. And then to also remember that each person you come into contact with, even in the workplace, they too are going to have a very long list of experiences that are helping shade the world, or helping shade the lens through which they see the world as well.
Yes. Yes.
Um, Yeah, Erin, so any final thoughts, recommendations, anything that you want to say before we wrap this up?
The one thing that's coming to mind is just to encourage people who maybe are struggling with, like, I don't know how in the world I'm supposed to start considering other people's perspectives. Like, maybe this just feels like an overwhelming concept. The thing that's coming to me is try and find ways to do this on a daily or a weekly basis on really low stake ways. Like, for instance, if you're driving and someone cuts you off, think of 5 different reasons where they're headed and why they cut you off, right?
Mm.
Maybe they're rushing to the hospital. Maybe they didn't see you. Maybe they worked a 12-hour shift and are going home and aren't as attentive. Try and come up with reasons as to why that might have happened beyond our initial response, which is probably like, oh, that's a jerk. Right?
Right. Yeah. And get angry about it. And then
Right.
next thing you know, you're driving all crazy.
Right. So if this concept feels too overwhelming and too hard to try, just incorporate it in small ways, in low stakes ways, throughout the course of your day or your week. And then you'll start to see, like, oh, I'm starting to naturally see things from different perspectives, or I'm naturally more open to what other people might be thinking or feeling about that. So that's my advice for how to chunk it, how to make it a little bit more of a concrete way you can start incorporating this in your life.
Yes. And we are a work in progress.
Yes.
So yeah, a little bit every day. And that's all we can do, right? As communicators. So how can people contact you? I'm going to add, all of your contact information later on into the comments and, into the show notes for when I put this out on the podcast platforms. But where can people contact you?
So the best way to contact me is to just send me an email, Erin, ERIN, at compassionatecoaching.org, or just DM me. I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. So Instagram, I'm Erin_compassionate coaching. And LinkedIn, I have to look because I don't have this memorized. LinkedIn, I'm Erin-Whalen, WHALEN compassionate-coaching. So just DM me or send me an email. That's the quickest way to find me and to reach out to me.
Okay, that's awesome. And at the very beginning, I did get some error messages from the LinkedIn platform. I think the first several minutes, maybe there was something corrupted. I'm not sure, but I'm getting the little green check mark now. So I think it's okay, but I'll double check that. And if I need to just this is being recorded. So if I need to just kind of place this back into LinkedIn again, I'll do that as well. But again, I'll make sure that contact information and everything is put into the comments as well as in the show notes, again. So thank you so much, Erin. This has been such a pleasure. You really help soften the rough edges for someone like myself. It is, that again, that's why it's so important to be able to have people in your life who you can speak with and think about those different perspectives. You have given such great advice today. And I think what you're doing is important and the world needs it. I think we all need it to be able to practice a little more compassion, on a daily basis. So thank you for what you do. And just know that you are appreciated.
Aw, Jennifer, I don't know what rough edges you are talking about.
Trust me, they are there.
Thank you so much. It's been so joyful just talking to you today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, everyone else, take care and we will see you soon. Bye.
Bye.